Hello, students. Welcome to your English class on Fame Global Academy. I am Onome Uku, your English teacher. In our previous class, we discussed uncountable nouns and countable nouns. But today, we're looking at another aspect of English language, which is writing. You should know by now that there are four basic areas or skills in English language. We have phonetics, otherwise known as spoken English. We have grammar, or you can call it grammatical structure. Then we have writing, and then we have listening skill. So they are like skills, or areas of English language. So far, we've discussed some topics on on phonetics. We've also discussed topics on grammar. So today we're looking at a topic in writing. Well, not basically a topic, but writing in general, what it entails and what it actually is as a skill and all. Today we're looking at writing as one of the areas of English language, one of the skills that you have to master as an English student or a student studying English language. What is writing? What is writing? Writing is the process of using symbols like your letters and punctuation to communicate to communicate your thoughts and ideas in readable form. Now what this means is that writing has to do with expressing your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, your opinions in the written form, in a written form. It has to be put on paper, or you have to use a pen, to write these ideas on paper, or it could be communicated digitally. Digitally, in the sense that you could type the words into your computer. You could type the words into your computer. Okay, so basically, writing has to do with using your pen to express your thoughts on a sheet of paper or typing the words into your computer for the purpose of reading it, or for your readers to actually get the information through reading or by reading them. Okay, that's what writing is all about. That's what writing is all about. Okay, now what is the purpose? Why do we have to write? Why do we have to type words into the computer? Why do we have to sit down and write using pen on paper? Now one of the purposes of writing is to inform, is to inform. Like, we have, okay, newspapers that informs us about latest events that are happening in our environment and even beyond our environment. Okay, so these newspapers carry news, to inform us about these happenings, within our local environment, as well as our external environments. So that's one of the purpose of writing. Okay, another purpose of writing is to persuade. Another purpose for writing is to what? Persuade. Now, writing to persuade has to do with the writer writing about, say, a particular topic to convince the reader about that topic or about that aspect or area or thing. Okay, so you write to persuade them believe to believe what you are writing about that specific what topic or opinion, giving them opinions, and all that. So you write to inform, then you also write to what? To persuade. Another purpose of writing is to entertain. Another purpose for writing is to what? Entertain. Entertainment is actually it reflects in creative writing per se, like our literature, where you read what authors write or read about certain opinion and issues that the writer wants you, or message that the writer is trying to pass across to you. And then during the course of reading them, you are entertained by some humorous aspects of the events as they what occur. Okay, so you are entertained, and then that's another aspect of another purpose of what? Of writing. Okay, you write to entertain people. Then another purpose of writing is to educate. Another purpose of writing is to what? Educate. And that's what the expository writing does. It actually gives you um, it gives you information, facts, not just information. It gives you factual information about a process. It could be a process. It could be an object. As the case may be. All right. So those are some of the purposes of writing. Those are some of the purposes of writing. Okay. Now, what are the components of writing? What is writing actually made up of? What are the features of what? Writing. Okay, so I call it components of writing, and one of them is the purpose. The purpose we just what discussed. Every writing has a purpose. Every writing has a purpose. You are writing to either entertain or to educate. You can also write to inform. You can also write to inform your readers, about certain topics or certain things. All right, and then another component of writing is the audience. The audience. Now, while the audience of a speech could be the listeners, the audience for writing are the reader, okay, or is the reader. So you are actually going to consider your audience before you write. And now, writing doesn't mean you have to um, write, from the blues. You have to consider those who you are writing for. So those you're writing for could be maybe, yeah, you could write for adolescents, you could write for professionals, you could write for adults, you could also write for children. So this component has to be put in place if you are writing. Okay, it has to be what considered if you are writing. All right. So in this case, your diction has to be actually reviewed, because it is not the words that you use for children that you are expected to use for adults. Okay, so that's where audience comes in terms of consideration in writing. Then we have structure, or organization of the writing or the piece or the work you are what writing. Now the organization has to be what very well structured, in the sense that you have to be able to write it in a cause effect relationship, or you have to follow a certain realistic pattern of life where you have, introduction, you have the body, and then also the conclusion. Okay, so these three basic structures or aspects have to be considered when you are writing. Okay, the beginning, the middle, the end, or you could call it the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So these two must be considered while you are writing. All right. Then we also have clarity, clarity and conciseness. Now, in this case, the reader has to be kept engaged, while reading. So, in doing this, the writer has to actually, look for very, interesting catchphrases, to place at the introduction to be able to um, catch the reader's attention and get them engaged throughout the work. Okay, so it's very important for you to do that, as in to make it what clear. Also, use I think the use of simple sentences, or a mixture of both simple sentences as well as clauses can go for clarity. Okay. The next component of writing is grammar. Is grammar and mechanics. Grammar and mechanics. Now, while writing, your grammar needs to be very what? To be very um, correct. You have to use your grammar very well to ensure that there are no grammatical errors while writing. Okay, so like also there's what we call punctuation. Punctuation in writing, where you have those symbols like the full stop, like the commas, like the colons, and the semicolons. All these are part of the mechanical accuracy while writing. So the grammar and the mechanical accuracy go together, as components of what writing. Now, apart from that, we also have your style, the style of the writer. Now, the style of the writer is what actually marks him or her, as unique from other writers. Now, you could decide to, make your writing different from others, maybe by the type of voice you want to use in writing, like the active voice, or the passive voice in sentences. Yeah, you could decide to, change your structure, to begin from the middle rather than from the beginning, So, and even the topics too, sometimes some writers don't actually have topics. They actually want the readers to read, and then, having read it, they want you to give that writing a topic yourself. And some don't actually conclude their work. So it depends on what your style is. Okay, so style, or the style of the writer, is one of the components, of writing. Then that should be the sixth one, and that's like what we have here for components. The first one was purpose. The second one is audience. The third one is structure. The fourth one is clarity and conciseness. The fifth one is grammar and mechanics, while the sixth one is style slash your voice. Okay, so these are the components of writing that the writer should consider while writing. Okay, so let's move to another subtopic here. Now let's look at the writing process, because writing is actually a process. It is a series of steps that you actually follow to be able to write perfectly. So we have um, like 5 steps or process that you have to what follow in writing. Okay. Now the first one we have here is pre-writing. The first step is pre-writing. Now here you have to do a brainstorming. You have to do brainstorm for ideas or for ideas. Brainstorm for ideas, and it is in this step that you get to choose a topic, and also you have to gather information for the introductory paragraph. Okay, so that's the first step. First step is pre-writing. Pre-writing. Okay, and then after pre-writing, the next one is drafting. The next one is what? Drafting. Drafting means that after you have gathered your information, you've chosen your topic, you now go to the next step, which is now what? Drafting. Drafting here is for you to write the first version of your piece, of your work. So just write a piece of your work. Don't mind the grammatical errors or punctuation problems. You go ahead and just write. Okay. Now, after writing the draft, the next step is to revise. Revise what you have written in the drafting step. Okay, so here you review the content. You now take a time to review the content for clarity, for mistakes, and other like punctuation mistakes and the rest. So it is here in this drafting step that you do all that. Okay, so after reviewing or revising your content for clarity and organization, the next step is now editing. You now what? Edit. Now, editing is like proofreading your work over again. You proofread for errors, grammatical errors, spelling errors, and punctuation errors. Okay, so these are like the 4 basic steps in um, writing process. In the writing process. Okay, all right. So I'm sure you know we have 4 types of writing, basic types of writing. Okay, we have 4 basic types of writing to include narrative writing. We have the descriptive writing. Then we have the expository writing, and then I think the fourth one is um, the persuasive writing. Okay, so those are the 4 basic writings we have. And hopefully, in our next writing class, we're going to start from the first one, which is narrative writing. Okay, so before we go, I would like to give you just short notes on what we have been saying so far about what writing. Okay, all right, let's see if we can take short notes on writing. Oh, okay. Writing is the process. Writing is the process of using symbols, like letters and punctuation to communicate thoughts and ideas, thoughts and ideas in a readable form. In a readable form. In other words, it is the ability to express ideas to, to express ideas, thoughts and feelings clearly and effectively on paper, or digitally, digitally. It combines grammar, vocabulary, organization, organization, and style to communicate to the reader, to the reader. Okay, so let's go to purpose of writing. Purpose of writing. Purpose of writing. Wow. To inform, to persuade, to entertain, to entertain, to educate, okay, so we have more purposes, but those ones are secondary purposes. But the primary purposes of actually writing are these four basic ones we have listed on the board: to inform, to persuade, to entertain, and to educate. Okay, like we said earlier, that writing is a process of using symbols like letters and punctuation to express your thoughts and ideas in readable form. Okay. Now, what this means is that we're looking at writing as the ability to express ideas and thoughts and feelings clearly and effectively in or on what on paper or digitally. Here, this means it could be on your computer system, okay? Like you type your words into a computer, and if you like, you can print it out or just leave it there as a software a piece, okay? All right. So what we're saying here in this paragraph is that um, it actually combines grammar and vocabulary. You know, we have done grammar and then we have done vocabulary too. And so what it means is that writing actually combines grammar and also what vocabulary. Talking about the lexicon, the English lexicon, where you have all the English words. So you use words to write words, to write, and also you are supposed to be able to communicate, using not just words, but also grammar, looking at the usage of the words you are using. The usage of what of all these words is grammar. All right. And so that is basically what writing is all about. Okay. And then we said we have the main purpose of writing, or the major purposes of writing, which are to inform, to persuade, to entertain, and also to educate. So far, so that was what we're having on our board. And then I want to continue with a short note on components of writing.
That's true.
All right, so let's see components of writing. So we're looking at components of writing. Components of writing. What are the features of what writing? What do we find in writing? Okay. Now, or what are we supposed to consider before writing? Now, we said the first one is the purpose. The purpose of what writing. Now, in doing this or to achieve this, you have to ask yourself the question: why am I writing this? Why am I writing? Okay, so that's what we're writing on the board. Ask yourself, why am I writing this? Why am I writing this? Okay. Okay. All right. So, like we said earlier, that we have the components of writing to include purpose, and purpose here is actually achieved when you ask yourself the question, why am I writing this? Why am I writing this? Okay. Now the purpose gives you what direction on what you want to what do or understand. What you want to do and what understand. That's the purpose component. Okay. And then the second one is audience. You have to actually consider your audience. If there are kids or adults, I said it before, if they're professionals or children. Okay. So you have to actually consider your tone. This helps you to consider your tone, the tone to use, and also it helps the choice of words, your choice of what words, which is your diction. Okay, so you can't be using too big words for children, and then of course you cannot be using simple sentences for professionals or adults. Okay, or adults rather. All right, and then we went further here to give the third one, or the third component, to include structure. Structure is also organization. Okay, structure is also what organization. All right, so we said what structure here helps you to what helps your ideas to flow, logically, from the beginning to the middle, or to the body and to the end, or which is the conclusion. Okay, so it helps you, to make your work very what organized. If you're able to write sequentially or in a cause effect relationship. All right. All right. Then for number four component, we have clarity, and it has to be clear and concise. Clarity and conciseness. As this, and this can be achieved by one, avoiding filler words. Avoiding filler words. Filler words are words like that you use in place of, say, actual words. For example, okay, these are filler words. Okay, so it will help you to avoid what filler words. Then it will help you to stick to one idea. It's better for you to stick to one idea per paragraph. Okay, In other words, a paragraph should actually consist or contain one idea. One idea. Okay? So if you have too many ideas contained in just one paragraph, then your work can be kind of, disorganized, very disorganized and clumsy and all that. Okay? So in the third one, we should also use what? Simple sentences and clauses. For goodness sake, simple sentences and clauses. I know some people want to use complex sentences, but for us, for our students in this class, or in this O level class, we have to maintain simple sentences and simple clauses that we can actually, write or use perfectly. All right. So let's see the next one, which is the fifth component. Okay. So that's um, for the components of writing. Okay. This fifth one is grammar and mechanics. This fifth one is what? For grammar and mechanics, okay? It means that your use of grammar has to be perfect when you're writing, okay? You're writing, you take note of what spellings, punctuation, and your verb tenses. Verb tenses where you have to use the present tense, where it has to be used, and then the past tense when it has to be used. Although in most writings, especially narrative writings are usually written in the past tenses. Okay, so but you have to vary what your tenses. Okay, to be able to have a balanced writing or a balanced piece. Okay, then we have style and voice. Style and voice. Like I said earlier, your style makes you unique. Okay, it makes you unique. So vary your what sentence length. Don't make your sentences too long, like you have in complex sentences. Okay, make them simple sentences instead or clauses rather than writing too much words, complex and in complex sentences. All right. Okay, so that is for style and voice, and so these are the six components of writing actually, basically. But there might be some other ones that you can do your research and then let us know in the comment word section. Okay. All right. The writing process. The writing process. And the writing process actually just means the series of steps that you need to take, okay, while writing, or steps that you need to consider while writing. The first one we have here is all right. So the process of writing actually has about four steps, and these four steps include pre-writing, drafting, revising, and editing. Okay. Now the first one is pre-writing. Pre means before writing. Now what do you do before you write? The first one is what? To brainstorm. Brainstorm. To brainstorm means is the process of trying to generate or get ideas, ideas on what write about. Okay, and it is in this step that you are supposed to choose the topic that you want to write about. Okay, and also you have to actually gather information during this pre-writing process step. You have to gather information that will serve as the background, information in that write-up. Okay. All right. Then the second one is drafting. The second word step is drafting. Here, you write, you just go ahead now, having collected or gathered information, and then you've chosen your topic, and then after you have brainstormed your ideas, you are now going to sit down and start what using them, and writing your story or whatever type of writing you are doing. Okay, and then after drafting is just writing without bothering about errors or flaws or whatever. Just write. Okay. Now, after the drafting process, or the drafting step, rather, the next step is the revising of what the drafts. Okay. So here you are going to what review the content of the content of your draft. Okay. You're doing this for clarity, for organization and what impact. Okay, you check how your work is organized. You check, how the content, what content actually is. These are done in while you are revising your drafts. Okay, now after revision of the draft, then you go to the what editing, the editing step, where you proofread, like you start reading it from the beginning towards to the end. And while you do that, you are checking for grammar errors, you're checking for spelling errors, and also for punctuation errors. Okay, so these are the basic steps, in what writing process in the writing process. Okay, so far in this class we have discussed writing. We've explained what writing is as a process of putting down your thoughts, your ideas into a readable form. Okay, and then we actually went further to give to explain the purpose or the purposes for writing. I will have basically four purposes for writing, to include education, entertainment, and entertainment, education, persuasion, and also for information, right? And then we went ahead to list the components of writing, to include the purpose, audience, structure, clarity, and also grammar and style. We have six basic components, like we said in our class. All right, and then we concluded by writing the different terms, or by stating the steps involved in the process of writing, to include pre-writing, drafting, revising, and editing. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next class. I remain your tutor, Onome Uku. Bye for now.